Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar. Today, we are going to talk about GDPR, one of the hottest topics across Europe in the past 12 months, and how our SpinifexIT solutions can help your organization with your GDPR readiness and compliance requirements. So, in today's session, our host, Brendan Andrews Warmuth, who's handling our Europe accounts, will give us a quick overview about GDPR from an HR and payroll perspective and standpoint. He will also introduce some of our SpinifeX IT solutions, which can definitely bridge the gap between your GDPR requirements. And also, he'll show a live demo of what these solutions can do for you. If you happen to see our videos in LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, we were able to post a 3-minute video of our solutions capabilities. It's actually a huge spoiler, but you can actually see it live this afternoon. You can ask your questions about how Brendan was able to do it right after the demonstration sessions. So without further ado, I will now hand you over to Brendan so that he can start giving us more information about GDPR and how our SpinifeX IT solutions can help you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Okay, so before we get started, I'll just make a quick disclaimer up front before we get into it. Of course, we all understand the GDPR is a complex place, and we don't want to be seen as giving any legal advice or committing to any developments in the future that may not happen. So there's the standard disclaimer up front before we get into it. But I will say that a lot of the stuff that we will be presenting today is existing already, and we're confident that it works. But we do need to, of course, be very careful about that. So let's have a look at the topics I'm going to cover off today. First up, we're going to just talk very briefly about the changes brought about by the GDPR and what opportunities we've identified where SpinifexIT can help. We've got some specific use cases that we're going to present to you today, and I'll go through those in detail so you can see how it works and what we're providing. And I've got some ideas towards the end there about some other things where GDPR can help as well. So we've got some good info on this one. So no doubt you've been hearing plenty of discussion about the GDPR. Certainly, as Vanessa said, the hottest topic for anybody operating in the European Union right now. We've got a very quick overview here in terms of some of the key points, and we're really going to focus on some specific use cases where SpinifexIT can provide assistance with your compliance. As you can see noted at the bottom here, SAP themselves are introducing plenty of new functionality for SuccessFactors customers, as well as providing some similar options in the on-premise world. But having said that, there's a general consensus amongst the experts that no single solution provides everything you need to be 100% compliant. So it makes total sense to look around, assess the different options for your different requirements, find the best fit for those problems that you identify. So we won't go into great detail today about what is the GDPR. Hopefully you've already seen some of the great webinars that have been produced by the likes of SAP themselves, the SuccessFactors teams, the various SAP user groups. I mean, everybody's talking about it, and let's hope that considering it's coming into effect this month, we're all pretty comfortable with what it means. We're just going to hit on some of those key points where we think we've got some opportunities. So what are some of the things that SpinifexIT can help with? That's the big question today. We have a number of different solutions available right now for SAP, HCM, and SuccessFactors customers, and we know already that basically all of them can help with your GDPR compliance in some way. There's so many elements to the GDPR to consider. There's no way we could cover it all off in a single webinar. So what we'll cover off today as a starting point are a few use cases we've identified based on some of the recent developments we've made in Easy Reporter and some of the existing functionality. We'll talk a little bit about what other stuff's coming along down the line, and you can expect to see some further videos and further information released later on to get into detail about some of the other things as well. So let's get into the details. First up, we're going to start with the employee's right to access. So this is a pretty key one. Basically, you're going to need to be able to be ready to provide all the employee's personal and sensitive data directly to them on request. Now, you can imagine in your system all of the different places you might need to go and find this. You'll also want to be able to ensure that everything you send to the employee is accurate, so no transcribing errors and no downloading errors or anything like that. Using some new functionality in Easy Reporter, we can quickly list out all of this data and provide a nicely presented version for an employee. Not only that, but we include an easy-to-use Fiori-based self-service portal so the employee can quickly retrieve this information themselves without having to contact the HR or payroll teams at all. Remember that the right to access comes with some reasonable timeframes as well. So not only do you need to be ready to provide them information, but it needs to be quick and it needs to be accurate. And we can use the SpinifexIT solutions to do that. And that's if you've seen the video on LinkedIn, you've probably got a bit of a spoiler, as Vanessa said, but I'll show you how that all works a bit more in detail in this webinar. Our main example today is going to focus on the info type data stored for an employee. But using Easy Reporter, we can access many different areas of the SAP and SuccessFactors Employee Central data. It's really up to you to decide what is reasonable, what you consider important to provide to your employees. So of course, there's various data stored in all those different systems that could be relevant to provide to the employee. What we'll do is we'll then present this information using Easy Documents. That makes it easier to understand for the employee and also gives us a bit of added flexibility in terms of including data from many different reports and sources and in different formats as well. This means it makes it easier for the employee to understand, and in our example, we can also include an explanation and tell them a little bit about why the data is stored and what we use the data for, because that's also an important part of the GDPR. What is the reason for storing the data and the reason for processing it? The final piece of the puzzle is allowing the employee to access their own data directly without needing to log a ticket or make a request to the HR or payroll team. Using the built-in web reporting functionality provided with Easy Reporter, we can very quickly publish reports and/or documents to a Fiori tile-based portal where an employee can retrieve the information they need. Of course, this way you have no worries about meeting the timeframes because it's instant. If an employee needs it, they can access it. Some key points about this service are provided above, and I'll give you a bit of a taste of how it looks and works in a moment. So let's jump over to the system and see how it all works. First off, I'll just show you how easy it is from an employee's perspective, and then we'll have a look at how it actually works behind the scenes. So this might be the part you've already seen in the LinkedIn video where I showed you quickly how you can access this information. What we're looking at now is our Fiori-based tile view. So this is the web reporting view. What I'm going to do is access my employee self-service reports. And for the purposes of today's webinar, I've set up a GDPR examples tile. And that's going to let me access my GDPR relevant reports. And the first one that I'll run is the current details document. Now, the way we've set this up in our system, and you may have seen this again in the video, is as soon as I click on this, I don't need to put any parameters or kind of decide what it is that I want or anything like that. As an employee, I simply click the link and it's going to run this particular document and show all of my data that's been specified in the back end. So I can see here in this document, it gives me a nice little introduction. So this is going to list all the data we have stored. Scroll down a little bit, and then I've broken it up into some different sections. So the first section is some basic personal data about me as an employee, where this is required for certain reasons. If I continue to scroll down, I've got a lot of data. I can see I also have a section regarding addresses. So that's been broken up because I wanted to explain a little bit to the employee why we're storing this data and what we use it for. Can keep going down a little bit more, and we'll see here's some payroll specific data. So we know this is used to actually calculate my payments and things like that. So it really allows you to quickly set up a document that you can provide all the data, and you can also provide a nice explanation to the employee. The other option that we may have seen before is a more report style view. So using the full details report, this will show me the similar data or the same data, but this is a tabular view. So this allows me to just see the same data but in a different format. The main thing here is if I use this option, I can actually download this report to Excel. So that's satisfying another one of my requirements because I do have a requirement to provide data in a portable format. And that's Excel, CSV, both very standard computer formats. So let's jump over and have a look at how this actually works from the back end, because of course it's all well and good for me to show you, it's very easy for the employee to retrieve, but what kind of effort or what kind of work did I have to do to build it? So I'll show you a little bit in Easy Reporter. Let me drill down into the menus here. We can see a folder that I prepared already for the webinar today. The first one we can see here is the data access document. This folder I've set up to allow me to build that document up. And I can see I've got a number of different reports here that are accessing the different sections for that document that we saw. So what say you do have Employee Central and you decided to include a section in your document with Employee Central data, it would be a simple matter of adding another report and then we can link that into our document as well. But for now, we'll do something even simpler. I'm just going to quickly make a change to this payroll specific report. So this particular section at the moment is providing some payroll data, and I'm going to go and add some additional data to it as well. Now, as I mentioned before, we know that Easy Reporter has access to a large number of different data sources, things like master data, time data, payroll data, and org management data, but we're really focusing on the info type data. And one of the things that we've added recently is this GDPR reporting. What that allows us to do is very quickly list all of the data stored in various info types. And you can see on the screen here, what I've done in this particular section of my reporting and document is I've chosen these specific info types. I'm reporting on info type 8, info type 9, info type 14. But actually I think, you know what, I'm going to add a couple. I'm going to add info type 15 and info type 16 because those also contain some important personal data for an employee. And I think it makes sense for them to be able to see that in that document as well. So I'm going to add those info types in there and I'm just going to save this report. And once that's saved, I'll just quickly go into the document and show you how that hangs together. So you can see that part of the reporting is pretty straightforward. And that's the same functionality that I use to provide that report version as well. So if I needed to add any info types to that for any reason, I can also do that very easily. So now we'll just go back and let's have a brief look at the document. And now that I've added those additional info types, I should probably also add some additional explanation about what the employee will see. So that payroll section at the moment is really just talking about some specific data. But let's have a look at the document. And what we can see in the document set up in Easy Documents is we have a number of different sections. We've got some free text that introduces the document. So we saw that at the start, dear employee, this is what you're seeing, etc. And then different sections for each type of data. So here's the payroll specific section. So let's just add on to here and say, this will also include any one-off payments and contractual specific data. So that's just adding to the description the employee sees when they run the document. And if I go ahead and save that, we'll save that updated and then I'll rerun the document and we can see what the result looks like. And the great thing about this is because we built all of this within Easy Reporter, including that Fiori front end, as soon as the change is made, that'll be reflected live in the update. So I'll just save this and then I'll jump back over to my portal and I'll be able to run it again. Let's give us a second here. Okay, so if I jump back to the self-service portal and I rerun my document, now I should see the updated version that includes that additional wording to explain a little bit more to me, as well as those additional info types that I requested, and I'll have probably a fair bit of extra data thanks to that. So we can see here, also includes any one-off payments, as I mentioned. And if I scroll down, here's all my additional payments, and here's my contract information as well. So that gives you a bit of a taste of, that's some new functionality that was recently introduced with Easy Reporter. We think it's pretty cool. Now we'll jump over to some of the other subjects. So next up is data anonymization. For anyone already familiar with our EasyClone solution, you'll know that this includes some powerful scrambling functionality. For any company that needs real productive data in their non-productive SAP environments, there is, of course, a bit of a risk of a data breach. And data breach is a very bad word in the GDPR world. Typically, what you'll find is your test, your development, or your training environments are not always as secure as production. People may have additional access in those systems that they wouldn't otherwise have. EasyClone will allow you to copy and scramble within a single process. So that means anytime you need some test or training data in another system, you can quickly create it without that risk of making productive data available in places it shouldn't be. And not only that, but we can also run a scramble within a system. So say you've already completed a full client copy from a production environment down to your test environment. You've got a massive amount of production data just sitting there in the system. It's a huge risk, massive possibility for data breach, which obviously attracts large fines. But with EasyClone, you can quickly scramble it all. And of course, finally, we've also got Employee Central covered as well. We recently added the new capability that allows you to clone Employee Central data along with your SAP data. Of course, this is just as important if you're operating in the hybrid environment, or possibly even more important if you are in that place. And of course, again, the data that's copied from Employee Central is also scrambled. Okay, so we talked about the cloning and the scrambling. So if you have EasyClone in place and it's all locked down, no one's allowed to turn the scrambling off, everybody's always using EasyClone, you can feel pretty safe. But how do you check that that data has been scrambled? You want to make sure that nothing somehow slipped through the cracks there. Maybe someone's manually recreated production data in your test environment. They're just, copying screen to screen and recreating an employee. Well, as you can see here, we've recently added the ability to report across multiple systems within EasyReporter. This means we can run a report to pull data from production and test and quickly see whether the data matches or does not match. Ideally not, because we've scrambled it. Not only that, but this functionality also works across Employee Central systems using our Employee Central connector. So if you're in the hybrid world, you've probably got an SAP production connected to your Employee Central production and an SAP test connected to your Employee Central test. We can report across all of those systems in a single report together. Now just imagine trying to validate all of that data manually. And the last piece we'll touch on here in the data management space is data retention. While we don't currently provide any purge or deletion solutions, we do understand that this is a concern due to the employee's right to be forgotten. There are, of course, many different ways to deal with this, from the heavy-hitting full suite archiving systems such as ILM, through to the much simpler option of just hiding the old data using authorizations. It's really up to your organization how you decide to manage that data. What we can help with at SpinifexIT is quickly checking that the data you're storing and viewing is relevant. A simple example is while we're required to keep employee records for a certain amount of time, possibly any info type record that's beyond the age of, say, 10 years should be removed or it should be archived. Maybe I shouldn't have access to that data. Our new reporting helps you confirm that's the case very quickly. So let's go back to the system and have another look at how these things work. Let's jump out of that one. And I'll start with the multi-system reporting. So I've got a couple reports that will be part of the pre-delivered package for EasyReporter. First up, what we're going to do is check that the employee's name and date of birth has been scrambled. So if I've got an employee in production and I've got an employee in test, ideally I want that data to be scrambled so I can't recognize and I don't know that that's that particular employee. So what this report will do is highlight where the values are the same, because that's a bad thing, as well as giving us a subtotal so we can see a high-level statistic and start to check. Do we know, are we getting 90% of data scrambled? Are we getting, are we close to? Ideally, we want probably 99% scrambled because it's only the occasional manual action that's causing it to be the same. We really want the data to be different at all times. So what this report does, we'll just quickly drill down here, is very quickly highlights, I can see for this particular employee, in production and test, they have the same name. Well, that's bad. It should have been scrambled. And in production and test, they have the same date of birth. Again, bad. That should have been scrambled. For all of these other employees, we can see differences in the names and differences in the date of birth, so they're safe. And the way that this works is what we've done is we've set it up so when you execute the report, it's actually using the standard SAP RFC connections to allow us to connect to other systems. So if I just quickly push this button here and then this button here, we can see I've set this up and I've said I want to connect to this test system when I run the report. And of course, because it's standard SAP functionality, that means it respects all those same authorizations. So if I'm an employee who has access to production, but for whatever reason, no access to the test system, for example, and I were to run this report, I'll just see no data in the test columns. So that's a good thing. And then the other report I've also provided here is one to check the bank account information for an employee, because again, that's another key field. So what we'll do is we'll quickly run that one just to show you that as an example as well. Now you can imagine there's probably a lot of other information you want to check that's been scrambled. Basically any, especially the sensitive data for an employee, because that's the stuff that you should really be focused on. But any personal data, any identifiable piece of data about an employee should really be scrambled when it's copied between a system. Okay, and we can see here for the bank account for this employee, actually I've got one employee whose bank account's the same. We can see the name's been scrambled, but for whatever reason the bank account's the same. So maybe someone's just changed the name and they haven't scrambled the rest of the data. Maybe there's a problem with the scrambling rules that we're using. Don't know, but the point is it's important to be able to check that and identify that as well. Okay, so let's have a look at this basic data retention check, because that's a nice one as well. This is a really simple one using that same functionality that I showed you earlier, where I can list out all of the different info type data. Essentially what this report will do is show me all of the historical data for some employees, and it's going to calculate the age of those records and highlight the records that are over 10 years old. So as we talked about, maybe I'm expecting that those records should have been archived and I shouldn't really be able to report on them in production. Or maybe I shouldn't even be able to see them. Maybe my authorizations should limit me. Either way, whatever the case, I can quickly see through one simple report, while all of these records are over 10 years old, I'm going to go and check why they haven't been archived, or maybe I can go and delete them myself and tidy it up, whatever the case may be. Now, I'm not going to do a demo of EasyClone because that's a pretty well-established solution, but if you are interested in seeing how that works, it's very straightforward, and I'm happy to be in touch and show you how EasyClone works as well. Okay, so that shows you some examples of the existing functionality we have that we believe can help you with your GDPR compliance. As I mentioned up front, there's plenty of other areas to think about for the GDPR. Not only are there other existing SpinifexIT product functionalities you can leverage, but we're also working on developing more based on requests and interest from our customers and partners. So let's talk a little bit more about some of those now. Here we have the developments that we've currently got planned. These are all items we have on our roadmap for the future to deliver to our customers. Of course, these are going to be prioritized based on the demand and could change if they, if you advise us of things you think are more important, or for whatever reason it turns out that this isn't possible, or we find better things to do. Of course, GDPR is a high priority for us. Now, the first point there is really around the reading of the logs. So as you may know, currently we can already report on the info type change logs with Easy Reporter, and that's used by a lot of our existing customers to provide different reports on, who's doing what changes, what are the scope of those changes, the volume of the changes, etc. We've also been asked a lot of times if there's an option to report on the same kind of data, but based on the viewing of data rather than the changing of data. That's where the read access logging comes in. This is something you may or may not have already turned on, something I only personally recently learned about, but it's definitely something that's worth considering as part of the GDPR. It allows you to track any view of a specific field in SAP. So mainly you're going to be focusing on sensitive personal data. So you could say anytime a user goes into InfoType 9 and looks at the bank account, we're going to log that in a table. That's all well and good to log it, but then how do you actually report that back out and make sense of that and use it? So hopefully we will be adding that into Easy Reporter. Alongside that, we would also like to report on the transaction logs so we can see how often or who is using some particular less secure transactions. For example, everyone's favorite, SE16. Ideally, the usage of this transaction is limited because it could be seen as a little bit high risk. It tends to get around some of the security restrictions you have in place, and you know it's one that we wouldn't recommend using too often. It's one that could easily lead to some data breaches. The next one you'll see there is around the reporting of the actual SAP authorizations. So who can see what data in SAP? Now that's a massively important thing when it comes to the GDPR. You don't want to be giving access to people to view personal or sensitive data when they really shouldn't have a need for it. And last, while we've got some great scrambling options already available in EasyClone, we're looking to expand that out further as well to make sure you can really cover off everything you need for the GDPR. And if you can think of anything else, we're always open to discuss and see what we can help out with. And of course, don't forget about all of the massive amount of existing functionality that's already available in the solutions. I'm really not sure it's possible to quickly summarize everything that could apply, but I thought I'd put down a few points that you might find a little bit interesting. The first point here talks about a process we've seen implemented in a particular customer already. This is not GDPR related, but I think it could be something that's useful. They run a job every day to identify any employee who's had a bank account change. This job produces an email to the employee to notify them of that change. It attaches a nice formatted letter and it says, "Dear employee, we noticed your bank account has been changed from this to this. Please let us know if there's any errors here." So of course that allows them to communicate with the employee, and it means if there are any problems, they know about them immediately. It could be something that's very useful in the GDPR. You can imagine a similar process anytime someone's sensitive data is updated in SAP. Maybe the employee should be informed. And the next point there to consider, and this is a big one potentially, is what interfaces do you have running out of your system? So what data are you sending out to other systems, for example? Are those processes secure? Using Easy Reporter, we can easily set up interface files and we can provide encryption on those as well, so we can really lower the risk of your data breaches. And that's about it as a summary of some of the different things that we have available now, some existing functionality and some functionality that's been developed specifically for GDPR. You know it's a massive area, and I'm really interested to find out more about what other things customers are interested in and where we can help, as I definitely think we can provide a lot of value. Now, you can, as you've registered for this webinar, you'll get some follow-ups, and I do plan on producing some additional videos like the LinkedIn video where I explain some of these other things as well. So for example, the encryption, we'll do one about that. Excuse me, but for now, let's go to the questions.
Thank you, Brendan, for giving us a comprehensive explanation about GDPR and our SpinifexIT solutions, how it can help with data access, data anonymization, and data management and retention in terms of an organization's GDPR requirements. We hope that everyone enjoyed the session and found this to be informative. So as Brendan mentioned, most of the solutions that he already showed are already 100% working and are currently in place. And we still have a lot more things that we're developing in line with the GDPR requirements. So we have exciting weeks ahead. So now we are entertaining questions. If you have any questions for Brendan, please type your inquiries using the questions box, and then just click send so we can ask it during the session. We'll give you a couple of minutes for people to think of questions, and then we'll answer it shortly. If you currently do not have any questions in mind, you may send it to info@spinifexit.com, and Brendan and I will answer it as soon as we can. All right, so we have our first question. Are these functionalities already available in the current release? I believe so, but Brendan, if you have any specific release information, like which release are these available since, you can share.
Sure. So the newer functionalities that I was showing, which is the listing of the info types and the ability to connect to multiple systems, those were made available in the 2018 R1 release, which is currently the most recent release. Some of the other stuff that I talked about, so for example, the web reporting, the encryption, etc., have been around for a little while, but those are particular GDPR functionalities that were introduced in R1.
All right. So if you're currently using one of our previous releases, please don't hesitate to email us at info@spinifexit.com so that we can help you with your solutions upgrade. Okay, let's wait for more questions. So while we're waiting, I would like to invite everyone to Success Connect 2018. We are going to hold it in Berlin on June. So we already have a booth number. It's in G8. You'll see it right there when you go to the entrance. We're also near the coffee stops. So if you have any questions about GDPR or the journey of payroll and HR as we transition to the cloud eventually, we'll be very happy to answer it. We're also going to have a 45-minute session that talks about these and how our SpinifexIT solutions can help with your cloud migration requirements.
I've just butt in here, Vanessa. For those who don't know, you're seeing two people on the right there. One of them is me.
Oh yeah. Yep. The one
I was
going
to say the bald one, but that doesn't work, does it? Because we're both bald. So.
Yep. Sorry. The second one is Henning. He's our guy in Germany, and Brendan will soon be in Germany. Okay. So I don't think there would be additional questions for this session. Anyone, if you have any questions, just send it to info@spinifexit.com and we'll surely respond to you. So if you haven't connected with SpinifexIT yet, please feel free to add us in social media in LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. It's @SpinifexIT. We do post our updates in our website as well. FYI, we are currently undergoing some website renovation, but we'll make sure that all of our pages are live most of the time. Right. You may also send Brendan a direct email at bandrewswarmuth@spinifexit.com. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Brendan, and everybody have a great night ahead.